Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Thursday, October 20th, 2022. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and Change. I see we've got some calls on here already. It is Thursday, and that means Bill Kurelic and Mark Porter are here. Gentlemen, how goes it?
Very good.
Going well this morning, Dan. Sunny day here in Columbus.
It is a sunny day here in the Gem City as well. Should be a nice, crisp, almost Indian summer weekend for football, which we all appreciate.
Dan, watch that Indians comment.
Did I say
Indians? Got knocked out of the playoffs.
Fault. I meant the Guardians anyway, Bill.
Okay.
Basically, here's how I watch the playoffs. I'm a Nats fan, and basically every team's best players from the Nats, so you're welcome. Anyway, it is a big recruiting visit weekend. Say that 10 times fast. Iowa will be here in the shoe for a noon kickoff. There are some very interesting recruits but we're going to talk this morning about an announcement on Twitter last night from offensive lineman Ian Moore, a big-time Ohio State target. He is on commitment watch in a very big way. If you were to stay glued to Bucknuts today in the morning, probably good if you like good news. What do you think is going on with Ian Moore, and if you've already got a impact story written?
Well, kind of like you said, if you've been kind of in tune to Bucknuts, you probably have a pretty good feel. I mean, I think in the last month, 2 months, I've done like maybe three or four articles on him, at least a couple, saying that like where Ohio State is, I think he's a potential next commitment for Ohio State. The last one I did was that it's going to happen sooner rather than later. He's told me that decision is coming. And actually, the last time I did an article, I believe he said something along the lines of, I'll be deciding in the next month, if not sooner. So I think it's been pretty consistent on Bucknuts. I love Ohio State's chances with Ian Moore. I've liked them for a long, long time. And I thought it was coming really soon. And sure enough, last night he posted on Twitter, big announcement tomorrow. So Bucknuts, I'd stay tuned. Which, by the way, Mark and I saw him at camp this summer at Ohio State in June. We were both really impressed. Ohio State offered him from that camp. And Justin Fry feels like he could play any of the 5 offensive line positions at Ohio State, providing he becomes a Buckeye. But first and foremost, they're recruiting him as a tackle. And Ohio State fans have been wondering, where's the tackles coming from? Well, Ian Moore is a guy that Justin Fry feels like can play tackle. And Fry also, after watching Luke Montgomery, felt like Luke Montgomery is a tackle, and that's what he's going to begin his career at Ohio State as. So, it's hard to argue with Justin Fry on anything at this point, because take a look at how the Ohio State offensive line is playing this year. Fantastic.
For sure. Mark, I want to get you on this in 1 second, but important to note, Moore is from New Palestine High School in Indiana. And Steve Wiltfong is an Indiana native and said the head football coach at New Palestine, he believes, is the best in the state of Indiana. So you're not just getting a guy who's talented, you're getting a guy with a nice coaching pedigree. Mark, what did you see of him at the camp?
Yeah, if memory serves me correct, there's a few great prospects coming out of Indiana this year. I think we've broken down a couple or talked about more Indiana kids than I've ever talked about in the past. Bill nailed it. What an athlete when we saw him at camp. But we knew right away that he was one of the premier guys, especially when they started going to one-on-ones and they give him the extra reps and the extra attention. And he locked it down all day. I like his chances to stay at tackle. I thought his high school film was excellent. I mean, it was a domination film from what I remember. I haven't watched it since we put it out, but I just remember being like check mark, all the boxes for him. When Bill and I were at the camp this summer, I love seeing him go against the great competition because, people question Ohio's competition sometimes. Well, so certainly people question the competition in Indiana. So he justified that on a very high level when he was at the camp.
Yeah. And I've been burned on Indiana guys before by kind of inflating them. Rod Smith was the cautionary tale for me. But, we have gotten plenty of good players out there. And like you said, there's guys like Mylan Graham and stuff in this class. So Indiana's definitely a hotbed and right over, so we need to take advantage of that. Speaking of taking advantage, Bill, one of the most discussed names in the class committed to Ohio State, Carnel Tate, Chicago native, wide receiver at IMG in Florida. He's been committed for a while, but has long been rumored to have an affinity for orange creamsicles or Tennessee football. He did not visit Tennessee this past weekend. I think we can all be thankful of that, as that was a spectacle of college football pageantry that you get only a few times a year. But his official visit to Ohio State is this weekend. Bill, are you looking forward to not having to talk about Carnel Tate anymore?
Well, if I am, I'm not sure that's going to happen because it's been going on for so long. And with the Florida guys, it's the old saying, you got to recruit them all the way through till they sign. And Ohio State will do that. But he is making his official visit. He did not go to that Tennessee game. We talked about that. We said that with all the talk out there about him going to the Tennessee game, I said, let's wait and see if he actually shows up. That did not happen. You hear a lot of things about this player or that player is going to flip to another school. Well, these guys are great players. Noah Rogers. It's no wonder not everybody, but a lot of schools are recruiting him still. He's fantastic. If you saw the article I posted after his game on Monday, the catch he made for a touchdown, one-handed catch, spectacular. He could be the best wide receiver in the country. I wouldn't argue with that. Brandon Ennis is great. Carnel Tate's great. Bryson Rogers is really good. These guys are going to continue to get recruited, and Ohio State continues to recruit them. And I do think Carnel Tate in the end is going to sign with Ohio State, and the official visit is this weekend, and that's good for Ohio State.
So he's the main visitor this weekend, Bill, which, by the way, I like the idea of Carnel Tate getting the red carpet, a very plush red carpet with a lot of attention. One thing I do remember about, if we go back to the camp vibes, you guys saw him at a camp. And Mark, what I remember you saying about Carnel Tate was you thought that Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson had gone out to run the drills with the dudes.
Yeah. The other thing I have burned in my mind with him is when IMG Academy came up to Ohio, I think Bill was at the game, and he made that one-handed catch early in the game in the end zone. And I think that was at the peak height of him and Brandon Ennis bursting onto the scene in Ohio State. And so, he's done – anytime you've ever seen him on a big stage, he's done it. IMG Academy, of course, is a big stage. But, yeah, it was a no-brainer. And, yeah, I mean, that day you watch him run around, you're like, does Ohio State have one of the receivers demonstrating the drills for these guys? So, yeah, that's how he looks when you see him in person.
Yeah, his red shirt didn't hurt the thinking there either, that he was wearing a red Ohio State shirt that day.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, listen, he's going to be one of the storylines of this class. If you're doing a history on this class, he's very key. I don't think it hurt the Ennis recruitment to have Tate on board, and to get a Midwest guy that goes to IMG. Also like the idea of still kind of colonizing the Midwest no matter where they go, which is obviously going to be an advantage for Ohio State. Bill, the other visitors this weekend, obviously Carnell will get a lot of love. There's some other guys you need to know about.
Yeah, in terms of numbers, it's not a big weekend. Nothing compared to the Notre Dame game or even the Wisconsin game in terms of numbers, but there's still some good players. Carnel Tate is not going to be the only good player there. In fact, 2024 wide receiver Micah Hudson from Texas is making the trip. He's a 5-star guy. He's going to be at Ohio State this weekend. Has Ohio ties, by the way. Vebo Toure is a name to keep in mind. He is an outstanding safety prospect. He is from Irvington, New Jersey. He's making the visit. He's coming alone, interestingly enough, at least as of right now. Ohio State offered his teammate, Adon Schuler, who is a Notre Dame safety commitment. Ohio State offered him earlier this week, and at the same time, I had the story about Vebo Toure making a visit to Ohio State this weekend. Again, Toure is a 2024 safety, and I would put him on someone that is absolutely interested in Ohio State, someone to very much keep in mind. The Buford guys, and Ryan Day, I had that story last Friday that Ryan Day was headed from Sewanee, Georgia, where he had just seen Kaden McDonald, the defensive tackle, that he left there and was headed to Buford High School to see the Mill Creek and Caleb Downs game against Buford and all their stars. Well, one of their stars is Montrez Walker, a linebacker, 2025 linebacker. He is coming up. He's going to spend the whole weekend in Columbus this weekend is his plan. From Ohio, Caden Davis is a defensive end from Mason that's had a really good season. He's going to visit. So there will be some other certainly very talented players at Ohio State this weekend. And I want to get back to Micah Hudson real quick. Micah Hudson, the 2024 wide receiver. A wide receiver to keep in mind for Ohio State is Taseer Denmark. He is from Philadelphia, Roman Catholic High School. Ohio State offered him early. He is going to announce his decision November 24th. And I like where Ohio State stands with him right now. He is, though, going to visit Penn State this coming weekend. Yeah. And he's planning to visit Tennessee after Penn State. And I think he's going to end up at one of those three schools, Ohio State, Penn State, or Tennessee. Right now, I like Ohio State's chances there as far as Taseer Denmark. And he's a wide receiver that would keep right on, the flow, the pipeline, so to speak, the Brian Hartline pipeline coming to Ohio State. So Taseer Denmark is someone Bucknut fans definitely want to keep in mind.
Yeah, I will tell you this, just from reading the tea leaves, reading a few stories, if Ohio State gets a commitment from him, that will bum out the Penn people. So 2 birds, 1 stone never hurts in that respect. I want to piggyback on something you said about the Buford Mill Creek game. That's like a big-time Georgia public school battle. I mean, the pageantry. You go to your Google machine and put in Buford Mill Creek, see some highlights from that game. Kirby Smart was there as well. It's a good watch. And we talked about still recruiting guys who are already committed. There's a reason Ohio State is still recruiting Caleb Downs. When you watch that video, better football player in the country, I don't know who it is. And he's not just on defense, man. Their entire offense was built around getting him the ball. And he is as twitchy, and he's just an impressive. So let's hope, speaking of continuing recruiting, that Ohio State can pull off a miracle and get him to deep and tricky Nick. All right, we're going to take a quick break here, pay some bills for the podcast. And we are back. We are going to answer some questions after Bill. So why? He put a crystal ball in for Damon Wilson. We all know that Ohio is chasing the triumvirate of defensive ends, Mateo Ungale, Keon Keeley, and Damon Wilson from California, Florida, and Florida, respectively. The vibe I get, Bill, as we've talked about these three guys almost ad nauseum, I think the feeling here now is Keeley will be at Alabama. There are several crystal balls coming, have been placed for Wilson to Ohio State, one from you and one from Steve Wilfong in particular, which I said it means to me the guys enrolled in classes. And then Mateo, who we got to wait on. Am I right about that? I want to add some info to that statement.
Yeah, I would concur with you. Obviously, I like where Ohio State stands with Damon Wilson right now. I don't think that's over. Talking to a source this week, they feel Damon has not made a final decision yet, and I agree with that. But I like where Ohio State stands with that. I like where Ohio State stands right now with Mateo, and they're continuing to work on Keon. I've said all along that of the big three, as I call them, defensive ends, I think Ohio State gets one of them. I think they may get two. That's kind of they're going to get one or two. I'd probably maybe lean a little bit more. I really just think they're going to get one or two of those guys. I think the chances of them getting three, while not incomprehensible, I think they're less likely. And if they just get one of them, they're going to be in very good shape. If they get two of them, well, that would be a grand slam, to say the least.
Well, consider what you're going after here. And I've said this before, those are the top three edge rushers in the top 247. So the fact that we're waiting on them makes sense. If you were to get two of them, that's a Jack Sawyer, JT Tuamalo kind of run. By the way, Mike Hall is also in that class. Is he good? Anyway, some questions from the people. Bill from Tully. Any update on Kaden McDonald? Haven't heard much recently.
Yeah, Tom. I could say wait till my article comes out later today, because I am in the midst of writing something about Kaden, but I will go ahead and speak on it now a little bit. Kaden is a kid that nobody seems to be giving Ohio State any chance to land, and I am not in that camp. Ryan Day went to his school and spent time there on Friday before going to see the Buford Mill Creek game. And Ryan Day didn't go there just because he has a lot of time, spare time on his hands. He went there because, he's recruiting him, and he is hoping to land him. Larry Johnson is recruiting Kaden strong, still very strong. Kaden went to Oklahoma this past weekend for an official visit. He has also been to Ohio State, of course, on an official earlier this season. He has been to Florida. He's been there's one I'm forgetting. Oh, Michigan. No wonder I forgot that. He's been to Michigan. Clemson, he's going to go to. I think that Ohio State's got a little better chance than people are giving them credit for. That's not to say I'm ready to crystal ball into Ohio State. I'm not. But I think the Buckeyes have a chance there. Kaden is definitely still has them on his list. I've been talking to him this week. I've been talking to people around him, and he's keeping things close to his vest. He's not letting on to where he's going, but Ohio State has a shot there, in my opinion. Clemson, do they have the lead? Maybe. But again, it doesn't matter who has the lead necessarily right now. It matters on October 31st when he announces who he announces, and then when he actually signs.
Yeah, obviously a lot of the questions on here about Damon Wilson and Mateo and Keon Keeley, so we nailed a bunch of those. We've also developed a little vibe here for Mark where JVM 1341 gets his Youngstown fix each week, so we're going to provide that. Austintown Fitch is having a good season. Why aren't they playing Canfield? And does Fitch's rise have anything to do with the talent hike? I preface this by saying Mark lives in the Canfield School District, and this is about to be a really biased answer. Go ahead.
It's there's no bias. I think there's a truthful answer. I think the rotation set up with Fitch and Boardman and Harding back when Canfield was in a conference is where they'd play one or two of those games every year, and they would rotate that schedule. So I don't think it's get someone off your schedule because of talent type thing. I just think it's a rotation they're using. Then Canfield not being in a conference, it's just who's open on the weeks they have open. So I think Canfield has a scheduling thing they're doing. And this year. I mean, the Austintown Fitch game last year when Canfield won was one of the bigger games in the area going into it. And if they were playing again this year, it would certainly be something the Youngstown area would enjoy. Both playoff teams, both going to be big teams trying to get out of this region. So, yeah, I understand the question. And, Fitch, they have some talent, probably the most talented team in the area when it comes to Division I prospects. Of course, Brian Robinson, the headliner there. We've seen him at Ohio State. A lot of great players there.
All right, Phil. Derek Williams, he's really good on this here. How many 2024 wide receivers are we taking? And then he has a list: Smith, Trader, Denmark, and the kid from Indiana. The kid from Indiana being Mylan Graham, who I referred to earlier. William?
Yeah, they're going to take at least 2. I could, maybe I could see 3 possibly as well. We'll see if anyone leaves unexpectedly. I'm talking about current Ohio State players. We don't know that right now for sure, but they're going to take at least 2. I could absolutely see 3. And I can't remember the question, the name of the person asking the question. Derek, I think it was.
Derek Williams. He's actually over in Europe. Didn't materialize to pick out of Arizona, but he's had a good career in Europe. Go ahead, Derek.
Well, Derek, yeah, I think you hit on the big names there. You mentioned Tassir Denmark, you mentioned JoJo Trader, you mentioned Jeremiah Smith, and you mentioned Mylan Graham. Those are really the 4 guys that I'm most keeping an eye on right now. And I think Ohio State has a realistic chance to land every one of those guys. Yeah. And in fact, I could make a case for Ohio State being the favorite right now for all 4 of them. Shocker there for Brian Hartline.
I was just going to say, there's already been crystal ball action there on some of those dudes, and you're talking about a who's who of wide receivers in the United States. So the recruiting for Brian Hartline just continues to be epic. As we watch Dan, Alabama.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, as we watch Alabama struggle to add receivers, and the ones they add can't keep their hands off the fans, it's just impressive that Ohio State can just lose the best receiver in the country, have 2 guys that literally deserve to be the first 2 players on the All-American team, and then it's just going to be more and more. So I'm glowing.
Everybody's talking about the 4 guys they got for 2023 committed, and as rightly they should. But if they get 3 of those 4 we just talked about, that group was, just as good really as the 4 they got this year. It's just unbelievable.
Of all the guys they're going after, including the ones they've got, Jeremiah Smith is going to end up being the highest rated of the group anyway. So that's spectacular. When you're mini Megatron in high school in Florida, we will take you. Give me a break. All right. I had another good question here. There's a really good question here that you guys will be good at. That uses the web.
I could talk about my the eye in the sky this week.
Right on. Do it.
Okay. So Bill went to see Dublin Kaufman, and I think it was about 7:30 Friday night. We get a text. Boy, Will Smith is putting on a show. And yeah, when you see the video of Will Smith that Bill got, Will Smith put on a show. Will Smith has been putting on a show every time we go see him. I can't remember a kid that I've shown up to seeing that's been more consistently giving me highlights and something to praise him about. And a lot of times I'm only there for a half, and kids can have a short half or not as many reps or just not glow. He's glowed every time I went there. Got to see more highlights out of Big Walnut, of the linebacker there. And then, we had a question about their running back, Nate Severs, last week. And we actually have some clips of him. He had a couple of touchdown runs there. He looked really good. I went to Bellefontaine to take a look at Tavion St. Clair. If you put a gun to my head and said, who you like better, Ryan Montgomery or Tavion St. Clair, you might pull the trigger before I give you an answer because it's really tough. Tavion St. Clair is the real deal. Okay, this kid can spin it. He is sharp. He's big. He's got athletic ability. I know he's a small school guy, and we haven't talked to him a lot, but he has a nice offer list for such a young kid. We have some sleepers in there. I have a sleeper defensive end that I think is better than Kamari Burns from Gahanna Lincoln. I'll kind of tease you with that one. It's the longest breakdown I've done at 9 minutes. Some really good-looking players in there. I went up to see Bo Jackson. I know there's been a lot of people talking about Bo Jackson. Is he related to the real Bo Jackson? No. He plays running back. He plays linebacker. He plays strong safety. He got a little dinged up a few times. I saw him a couple of weeks ago, and he was dinged up, so he's fighting through an ankle. Big game for him next week. Dominique Kirks for Villa Angela St. Joseph will be a guy we're talking about. He runs too well for how big he is at defensive end for the Bucknutters not to have Ohio State interest in that type of player. He will be one that's blowing up. A lot of good players in this breakdown, of course, so check it out.
And we'll have that up this afternoon for sure. I'd also like to comment, we talked, I have a couple of friends who have just had babies. And when you have a boy, I always say you got to give him the Yankees third base test or the Guardians third test. When your name is announced over the loudspeaker, DJ Porter works. Okay. You name your kid Bo Jackson. You got some guts, man.
Yeah.
Bo Jackson. It wasn't. Why don't you just name your kid Jim Thorpe? Good Lord.
Michael Jordan.
Man. How about some
Michael Jordan?
Growing up? Yeah. Bo Jackson.
I'm gonna name my kid Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
It's a head start. I don't know if that will help with your length, as it were.
Yeah.
All right. There was one question I wanted to let you guys both answer at the end. This is kind of an interesting one. Lorenzo Styles Jr. Obviously, we know his younger brother, Sonny Styles, who, Lord, if there's a good-looking prospect in football, you have seen him, and his name is Sonny Styles. Just look at the pictures of Sonny Styles these days, hanging out with his teammates. He's 2 inches taller than everybody else. Of the other skill type dudes he's hanging out with. So that's tremendous. But his brother played wide receiver and defensive back. Pick Central, obviously Pickerington Central, obviously the son of Lorenzo Styles, the Ohio State linebacker. He went to Notre Dame to play wide receiver. And the question is, did you guys think he projected better as a defensive back? I know he was pretty much set on playing wide receiver, and there was a chance he'd get an Ohio State offer. I can't really remember how that finished up, but a little Styles action, a little way back here to finish the show.
I remember him well. He was a tailback at Pickerington Central, and I thought he was one of the smoothest, silky smooth tailbacks I've seen. He pretty much put the team on his back towards the end of the playoff run where I saw him that year. I thought he was an offensive dynamic weapon, so I had no problem with him being on offense. Would he have projected better on defense? Possibly. I think taking that type of the talent over the defensive side of the ball, you got a five-star type talent over there. But I don't think there was a problem with him being a wide receiver. And I think he played early at Notre Dame. I think he was in the Ohio State game for the first catch of the game for Styles. So it's not like his talent on offense didn't get him on the field earlier. There's a problem there. But anytime you take any great receiver and throw them over as a DB, they're usually lights out if they can just learn to backpedal.
Yeah, he's unfortunately chosen a school that doesn't look like it's passing the ball very well. So I think the catch against Ohio State may be his highlight of the season thus far. Bill, finish it off for us.
Yeah, I saw him play at least 2 times in person, maybe 3, and I concur with Mark. Offensively, I liked him a lot. The one question mark I thought maybe would be better for defense for him is just size. He's not the biggest guy. So I thought maybe as a corner, it might be better for him. But, he's a good player. Very good player on offense, too. Unfortunately, Notre Dame, they've had some quarterback issues. They seem to have got him settled a little bit now, more than, say, the first game of the year. But they don't have C.J. Stroud out there. So that hurts Styles a little bit at Notre Dame. And real quick, I want to mention that I'm going to be seeing Bo Jackson tomorrow night in person. I'm really looking forward to that, going to the Cleveland Villa St. Joseph game at Worcester tomorrow night. And that's going to be a big game. I know, as Mark mentioned, Jackson's been a little bit dinged up, but the playoffs are on the line. So unless he were to be injured in practice this week, I expect to see him out there. I wouldn't be going all the way up there if he wasn't, because, as I said, playoffs are on the line. So they're going to need Bo, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing him play tomorrow night.
Keep it locked in here, Bucknutters. Like we said, it's currently 9:24 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. There's a chance Ohio State will have a recruit added to the fold by about 10. So want to be ready for that. We may have heard some stuff about that. Don't forget what we learned live after the game on Saturday against the Hawkeyes. Dave Biddle will go live, and then we will have all the love from Carnel Tate visit and everything else. William will have that for you Sunday and Monday. And then we will be back on the high school gridiron for these guys. We'll have Eye in the Sky from the Iowa game. We're just going to have more content you can shake a stick at. Minutes in the books. We're not going to charge you for this extra 45 seconds here. Have a good one, Bucknutters.